Hello guys, I am back. I've taken a nice off-season break away from all things triathlon, so I thought I'd give you a quick update and then we can roll into my top 3 tips for how to maximise your triathlon off-season. Yes, hello guys and welcome back to the channel. If you've forgotten who I am, which I wouldn't blame you for how long it's taken for me to make another video, I'm Josh, a medical student and triathlete based in London, and on this channel we talk all things triathlon, whether those be vlog, product reviews or training tips videos like this one today. Yes, I've taken a bit of time off since I last made a video. My last race, Outlaw X, as you know if you watch that video, and it'll be up in whichever corner that makes sense to put it up in. My last race didn't go exactly how I planned, but I didn't have any further racing, so it made a really nice point to take a bit of a break and step back from triathlon for a little bit, both to mentally and physically reset myself, but also make time to do all of the other things that I haven't necessarily put a priority on during the really big race season that I've had this year. But for the last week or two, I've been easing myself back into it and I'm pretty much back up to full steam, and I'm thinking a lot about my triathlon off season over the winter to get ready for next year's racing, which I'll have some announcements for very, very soon. So along with reminding you that I still exist, I thought I'd give you my top 3 tips, the top 3 things that I'm focusing on this off season to make sure that I can reach those triathlon goals for next year. The first thing on this list might seem a little simplistic, and it's actually something that I've been doing already, and that's taking a bit of a break, a bit of step back from triathlon and not training as much as maybe I have been doing during the full season. And for me, that really comes in 2 stages. That's like 2 or 3 weeks almost completely off triathlon training, just riding with friends, running with friends, doing things that I really enjoy that I don't necessarily get to do during the time during sport. And then the second phase is that off season, so November, December and early January for me, where I'm really just not training as much. And again, I've kind of hinted on some of the reasons that you might want to do that, but physically being able to reset and shed all of that fatigue that you've built up throughout the year is really important, because when you're training like as much as you can, you're not taking as much time to recover as maybe we should. And I think a lot of triathletes are guilty of that, myself included. And by really forcing yourself to take some time off, you kind of shed all that fatigue and you're way more likely physically to be ready to do some really good training in the off season. As you build up that fatigue through the off season, you take a small break and then you build up even more during your full race season. But it's not just physical fatigue that I think is really important to shed, it's mental fatigue. Doing triathlon means a lot of sacrifices, whether those be not going out with friends, not drinking, saying no to that Sunday morning brunch because you've got a long run after your bike, whatever it may be, triathlon training does take sacrifices. I know personally I sacrifice a lot of social events and a lot of my sleep to make sure that I'm getting up and swimming every single morning during the week, and I really quite like that extra hour in bed sometimes. And I think regardless of how much you love triathlon training, because I really do love it, but those sacrifices do add up, and I think they add up to a lot of mental fatigue. It's really hard to want to keep going and going and going when you're making these sacrifices, and you can always feel like maybe they're not worth it by the end, whereas you thought they were the best thing to do at the start of the season. So by taking a step back, not only are you physically refreshing, but you're also mentally refreshing, because you can go on those brunches because you're not doing that long brick session. You can go out for drinks on a Friday night because you know you don't have to necessarily get up on a Sunday morning and go for a long ride or whatever the case may be. You really can do all of those things that you've given up, and I think that helps just get you ready. And by the time that you've done some of those things, almost kind of gotten them out of your system a little bit, you're really, really ready and you're eager to get back to triathlon training. Whereas at least I find by the end of the season, I kind of want it to be over a little bit because I am so mentally and physically fatigued. Personally, I'm going to be doing about 2 months of reduced volume training before I hit it in the new year really hard and go up to the 15, 16 or 17 hours that I was doing before. But I would experiment and see exactly what makes you happy, because you can still get massive fitness gains with a lower amount of training time, especially if you follow these next 2 tips coming up. So another really key part of my off-season training is going to be exactly what I'm doing right now. Nice and easy zone 2 work. So I'm on the turbo for 1 hour of zone 2 now, but we're doing a lot more than that, just 1 hour. Zone 2 or base training is one of the most important things that you can do in your off season. When we do sport, we use one of two main energy systems, aerobic or anaerobic respiration. Aerobic for when we're going easy and anaerobic for when we're going hard. And zone 2 training is probably the most effective single way to improve your aerobic respiration, your aerobic power, and that's really important, especially in triathlon, but in all sports, for a number of reasons. But having a really good aerobic or a really good zone 2 system means that you can keep going for a really long time, which is especially important in triathlon as we look to do greater and greater distances. As you move from your Olympic to your 70.3 to your full, you need to keep improving that aerobic engine, and even if you're already doing full distances, you can't get away without it. The best way I've had it described to me is it's the foundation of a house. You need a good base, a good foundation of fitness, and specifically zone 2, before you start to work on some of the other higher zones. Because if we're already thinking about going straight to zone 3, zone 4, zone 5, so tempo, sweet spot, threshold, VO2 work, if we don't have that base zone 2 at the bottom, we might have a really good FTP, we might have really good high VO2 max power, but we're never going to be able to finish a race because we'll be able to hold that interval for however long, but we won't be able to recover from it. We won't be able to keep going over and over and over again. Our house is flimsy if we build it without that zone 2. And so I suppose the next logical question is, why do zone 2 specifically in the off season? I think that's a really interesting question. There are lots of different theories as to why this method prevails the best, but at least my 2 cents is that throughout the year we spend a lot of time trying to get faster and faster. We're working on that top end all year, and maybe we're neglecting our base, and I definitely have, but we spend all that time trying to get faster because we know we're racing in 6, 8 weeks, 2 months, whatever it is. We know we've got that race coming up and we want to be really fit for it and ready. Whereas now we're in the off season, we don't have that next race coming up to stress about and get ready for imminently. We can take a little bit more time to work on the more fundamental parts of triathlon training. If I don't do VO2 max efforts for the whole of November, nothing bad is going to happen. I'm not going to suck in my next race because of it, because my next race isn't for 4 to 6 months. I can afford to do work now that's going to make me faster later. Whereas in season, we're focused on doing work now that's going to make us faster right now. We're always preparing for the future, preparing for next season during our off season. And that's why doing as much zone 2 with small amounts of the other zones is really, really important. And I think one of the most important things to really utilising that off season. The third and final tip on this list is strength training, and that is going to come in a number of different forms because as triathletes we use a lot of different muscles in a lot of different ways. So we're not just thinking about going to the gym and lifting really heavy weights, we're thinking about more functional strength rather than those pure massive blokes in the gym. I think there are 3 main components to a successful strength program over the off season for triathletes, and I'm going to do an even bigger video on this because I think there's even more to break down. So if you want to see that video, then hit subscribe. But here are my cliff notes for that video. I think the first thing is unfortunately going to the gym and lifting relatively heavy once or twice a week. We're mainly thinking about big compound lifts, our squats and our deadlifts, mainly for our legs, and our bench press, our overhead press and our rows for our upper body. But we want to do that in conjunction with making sure that we're still working on our endurance and trying to organise those strength sessions around our training to make sure that we can still do our endurance training really well. Our focus isn't 100% going on that strength training. The next part of it is core training. I think this is really underutilized by a lot of triathletes. Whether it's swimming, cycling or running, we are always using our core to link our upper and our lower body and keep ourselves stable on the bike, keep our bodies nice and upright on the rung, and make sure we're not squiggling through the water like a snake and we're staying nice and straight like an arrow in the swim. And we can't do that without having really strong core muscles. And I know that I don't work on mine enough, and I'm sure a lot of you guys watching at home are in the same position. And so I would recommend, again, probably twice a week, doing 20 to 30 minutes worth of core. Here, it doesn't really matter what you're doing, just try and make sure you're progressing it week by week so that you are progressively overloading those abdominal muscles so that you are making sure that they get stronger every time that you train. And the third and final part of that strength plan for over the winter is our actual in-sport strength training, and that's going to be slightly different for each sport. But what I mean by this is when we're swimming, I'm thinking about pool buoy use, focusing only on the arms with some paddles to work on that really functional strength in the pool. For cycling, it will be the same. So we're thinking about some slightly overgeared, low cadence work, which, although some people think is exactly the same as just going to the gym and doing some squats, I would challenge you to go to the gym and do some just over body weight squats with about 60 of them every minute. That would be really weird and really hard. I think cycling, and well, any sport specific strength work is completely different to what I've told you to do in the gym. And then finally on the run, it's a little bit harder to increase the resistance that we use, but I would highly recommend doing some hill work, whether those be hillier runs or hill sprints. Funnily enough, I actually have a whole video for improving your running strength by using hills, whether they be hilly runs or hill reps, and you can see that in the relevant corner and down in the description below. But if you include those three key elements to strength training in your triathlon off season, I think it will make you a much stronger, pun intended, athlete, and you'll be going way faster and feel way more confident across all three sports for your next race coming up in the new year. So make sure that you're taking time off to both physically and mentally reset. Make sure that you're working on your base and on your zone 2 across all three sports, and do those three strength training tips that I gave you, and I can almost guarantee that you're going to have an incredibly successful off season. So take some time off, guys, enjoy yourself. Hit that subscribe button down below to help out the channel, because I'm going to be producing loads more videos now I'm back into triathlon training. And I'll leave that running strength video for those hill rep tips on screen now, so you can go and click that, watch it, and be ready to improve your running strength. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.